My name is Sarah Whitmore. I'm 37 years old, born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm a mother of two, a registered nurse, and until recently, a woman who thought she had God all figured out. I prayed sometimes, usually in traffic, occasionally before bed, if the day had been hard. But prayer was more like a voicemail I left in heaven's inbox. No expectation, no real relationship. I had grown used to handling life on my own, as if God were a backup plan I rarely needed. All of that changed one evening in late October. It started as an ordinary Thursday. I had just come home from a 12-hour shift at the ER. The kids were at my mother's, and the house was finally, blessedly quiet. I sat down with a glass of wine, mindlessly scrolling my phone. That's when it happened. A sharp pain struck my chest, not like anything I'd ever felt before. It wasn't a heart attack in the way textbooks describe it. It was colder, slower, like something ancient had reached into my body and started turning a key in my ribs. My vision blurred. The wine glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I tried to stand, to scream, but everything inside me turned to fog. And then silence. But not the silence of sleep. This was the kind of silence that listens back. A soundless weight that pressed against every part of me, making me aware I was no longer in the world I knew. I opened my eyes, but nothing was there. No hospital room. No paramedics. No light even. Just space. It was like I was suspended inside an endless echo, but the echo never returned. My first instinct was fear, but the moment I tried to scream, I realized I had no mouth, no body. I was thought without flesh, presence without form. I was me, and yet I'm not. Time passed. Or didn't. I had no way of knowing. And then something changed. A wind, if I can call it that, moved through the space. It didn't stir air, but memory. I began to feel every moment of my life with frightening clarity. Every unspoken word. Every lie I told politely. Every time I shrugged off someone's pain because I was too tired to care. Not as memories, but as truths that hung in this place like unfiltered light. And I wept, though I had no eyes. I don't know how long I was there. I only know that when the light came, I didn't expect it. It wasn't blinding, not at first. It approached like sunrise through mist, gold, then white, then something deeper than color. I couldn't look directly at it, but I knew someone was there. Someone holy. Someone whose presence made every hidden part of me tremble, not out of fear, but recognition. He didn't speak with a voice, yet I understood him. He was Jesus, and in his gaze I was undone. He didn't accuse. He didn't point at my flaws or demand repentance. He simply revealed me to myself, and that was enough. I saw how far I had drifted, how little room I had made for him in my life, and still he loved me. There was warmth in him, like a home I never knew I missed. There was sorrow too, a deep aching sorrow, as if he had watched me sleepwalk through life, whispering my name while I drowned in distractions. Then, without warning, he asked, "Do you want to see what the dead are doing?" I didn't answer. But in this realm, intent was louder than words. He reached toward me, not with a hand, but with something deeper. And the moment his presence touched mine, the world around us began to shift. A sensation like falling and flying gripped me, and I understood this was only the beginning. We moved, but there was no wind, no wings. It was more like being pulled through intention itself, like thought had become a road and I was gliding along it, tethered only to the will of the one beside me. I couldn't see Jesus the way I would see a person on earth. He wasn't a figure of robes and skin. He was a presence, heavy with eternity, and yet gentle enough to cradle the fragments of a shattered soul. And I was shattered. Even in this realm, I felt it, the broken pieces of who I had become without realizing it. The space around us began to shift. Light dimmed into something gray. Sound returned, in the form of distant echoes, but distorted, like human voices underwater, endlessly looping words that no longer had meaning. And then we arrived. It looked like a city, or a copy of one. We stood in what seemed like a downtown square, towering buildings, endless glass, traffic lights blinking to no one, storefronts with names I couldn't pronounce. Except everything was off. Not decayed, not destroyed, just detached from reality. Like an abandoned film set waiting for actors who would never return. And yet, it was full. Souls moved through the streets like sleepwalkers. Some walked in circles. Others stood motionless, staring into invisible windows. One man sat on a bench counting coins that disappeared every time he touched them, only to appear again and again and again. I watched a woman, maybe in her 40s, stand outside a locked cafe. She kept knocking, calling a name. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Her eyes were hollow. Her clothes shifted, office suit, hospital scrubs, yoga pants, as if she was cycling through every version of who she'd been. But her face never changed. Tired, desperate, unfinished. I turned to him. "Who are they?" I asked. "Are they sinners?" The word felt small, even ugly in my mouth. It didn't belong here. Jesus did not answer right away. Instead, he allowed me to feel the answer. They were not murderers, not monsters, not what we imagine when we think of damned. They were ordinary people, fathers who worked late and ignored their children, women who measured their worth in likes and filters, teenagers who laughed at prayer and grew into adults who forgot it existed. They were like me. And then he said, not aloud, but directly into my spirit, they built lives without me. They were not judged. They simply arrived at what they truly chose. I felt it like thunder in my bones. These souls weren't punished. They weren't tortured by demons or fire. They were simply living out the same patterns, habits, identities they had worshipped while alive, addicted to their own noise, clinging to routines and dreams that no longer mattered. I saw a man in a $1,000 suit yelling into a phone that no longer worked, over and over. His briefcase was open, filled with blank papers. He couldn't stop. He didn't want to stop. And nearby, a young woman curled into herself on a staircase, holding a cracked mirror. She whispered names into it, lovers, friends, followers, waiting for someone to say hers back. But no one ever did. They are not lost because I left them, Jesus said, his voice echoing like light through the ruin. They are lost because they never turned toward me to begin with. And I knew then the terrifying truth. They had not realized they were dead. And now, they didn't realize they were still dying. Some of them, just a few, looked upward. They would blink, as if a fragment of memory stirred in them. A hymn, a childhood prayer, a tear shed alone in the dark. And those moments, rare as stars in polluted skies, were like candles. Jesus turned toward them gently, watching, waiting. I suddenly dropped to my knees. Or maybe I just fell inward. Because the weight of it, the finality of eternity without God, was more than I could bear. "Why did you bring me here?" I whispered. And his answer came not with anger, but wounding compassion. "Because you still have time. And they do not." I wept. I had not cried like this even at my father's funeral. Because this was not mourning over a person. This was mourning over a truth I had ignored. A truth the world mocks, minimizes, memes, and monetizes. We were made for him. And nothing else can hold the weight of a soul. As I wept, he placed something in me. I can't explain it. Not a vision. Not a gift. More like a seed of holy desperation. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them while they can still hear." And then the world began to break apart around us, or maybe it was me breaking. Because the next thing I knew, I was falling. Back toward my body. Back toward the noise. Back toward a second chance. I woke to pain. Real, raw, howling pain. It felt like someone had slammed me into my body, like light being shoved back into a cracked bulb. I gasped for air, not like a newborn, but like someone who had been drowning in eternity and suddenly found herself choking on time again. My vision blurred. Machines beeped around me. Harsh fluorescent light stabbed my eyes. I heard voices, nurses, a doctor calling out vitals, and then my name. "Sarah. Can you hear me? Sarah." I turned my head slowly. Every nerve screamed. The ICU. I was alive, but I didn't feel human. Something inside me was too large, too eternal to fit in skin. They told me later I had gone into cardiac arrest. that I was clinically dead for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. That I had been very lucky. That someone up there must love me. I just stared. How could I explain that I had seen the place where the dead live? That I had stood beside the one who holds galaxies together by breath alone? That while my body was cooling on a hospital gurney, my soul had been watching eternal emptiness play out in souls who didn't even know they were gone? So I said nothing. Not yet. They ran tests. Lots of them. CT scans. Echocardiograms. Blood work. Everything looked normal. Miraculously normal, the cardiologist said with a raised eyebrow. But I was not normal. Every beep of the heart monitor sounded like a countdown. Every shadow in the corner of the room reminded me of souls trapped in loops they had chosen without knowing. And worst of all, I could still feel him. Jesus. His presence wasn't gone. It lingered, like sunlight on your skin long after you've come in from the cold. I could feel him watching, waiting. Not in judgment, but in invitation. I lay there for 3 days in that hospital bed, surrounded by flowers and sterile sympathy, feeling like a ghost among the living. Visitors came. My sister, my mom, a pastor from the local church I hadn't attended in years. They brought prayers, casseroles, cautious hope. But all I could think about was the woman with the mirror, whispering names that would never answer. On the third night, when the hallway was quiet and the morphine haze had finally cleared, I whispered into the dark. Why me? And somewhere deep, not in the room, not in sound, but in soul, the answer came. Because you asked once, even when you didn't mean it. And suddenly I remembered. It was 5 years earlier. I had been sitting in my car in a Walgreens parking lot, crying over a miscarriage no one knew about. I had clenched the steering wheel, teeth gritted, and said through tears, God, if you're real, say something. Do something. I had forgotten that prayer. He hadn't. I began to tremble. Not from fear, from reverence. From the realization that no prayer is wasted. That God doesn't work on our clocks, but on the deep timelines of souls. And I knew. This wasn't about me surviving. It was about them. The sleepwalkers. The mirror holders. The briefcase men. The souls still alive, but living like the dead. It was about the ones still able to choose. When I left the hospital a week later, the sun felt too bright. The sounds too loud. I walked through the parking lot like I was returning from another planet. But I had made a vow. I didn't know how to explain what I had seen. I didn't know where to start. But I knew what Jesus had placed inside me wasn't a dream or hallucination. It was a commission. To tell them. Even if they laughed. Even if they rolled their eyes. Even if they labeled me as the crazy nurse who died and found God. Because eternity doesn't care about reputation. It only cares about truth. And I had seen it. It started small. A journal. I couldn't sleep, couldn't settle. So one night, I lit a candle and wrote everything I could remember. The city of the dead. The hollow souls. His voice. His eyes. The feeling of him inside my spirit like fire under the ribs. The words poured out like a wound. I thought I was writing just for me. But I should have known better. Testimony has a voice of its own, and it never stays silent for long. 2 weeks later, I shared it with my sister. She wept. Not dramatic, not performative. Just quietly, the way people weep when something deep and ancient gets stirred. When the soul remembers it's made of more than deadlines and debt. I began to speak in churches. Not from pulpits, not at first. Just women's groups. Coffee shops. Back porches after Bible study. Someone would ask what happened when I coded, and I'd smile, because death doesn't like being called by soft names. And I would tell them. About the silence. The presence. The city. And about the tragedy of choosing everything but God, and waking up in eternity without him. Some laughed. A few dismissed it. You must have been hallucinating, or the brain does strange things during death. But most didn't argue. They just went quiet. Because somewhere, deep down, we know. We know we've built lives full of noise, but empty of prayer. We know we've traded communion for content. We know we scroll to avoid the stillness that might let us hear him again. I saw it in their faces. The tremble of conviction. The stirring of forgotten hope. And that's when I started saying it out loud. every time to every person. Pray. Before the mirror breaks. Before the door locks. Before your breath runs out and all that's left is what you built without him. Pray. Even if you don't know what to say. Even if you're angry or bitter or numb. Just say his name. Jesus. He's listening. He always was. Because I had learned something in that strange place between worlds. The line between the living and the dead is not time. It's desire. And the dead I saw, they had once been alive. Successful. Loved. Beautiful. But they didn't desire him. And eternity simply honored their choice. That's the terrifying mercy of God. He won't force us to love him. So I speak. I write. I pray more now than ever. Not like before. Not casually. Now, my prayers are battle cries and rescue lines. Every morning I wake and say, Jesus, use my words. Use my wounds. Use the fire you put in me to wake the ones still breathing. I've told my children, not just God is real, but don't let the world put you to sleep. Stay awake. Stay close. Stay prayed up. And I'll tell you too, whoever you are, wherever you're reading this, your breath is not an accident. Your heartbeat is not just biology. You still have time. But time is not your friend. It is your mercy. And mercy runs out when the veil closes. So tonight, before you scroll again, before you fall asleep, I'm begging you, whisper his name. It doesn't have to be eloquent. It just has to be real. Jesus. I don't know what I'm doing, but I want you. I want out of the silence. I want you before it's too late. He hears it. I'm living proof. And I will not be silent. Not until every soul that can still choose does. Not until the city of the dead stops growing.